And thank you for the teams for sharing some notes. We'll try and keep up. It is a little bit more difficult with this farther field and trying to cover it on field 7. But I'll do the best that I can. Red flag to pole. And with that horn, you might have just heard there, 70 minutes of game time start now. I'm going to focus just on the camera work initially. Because of, there's a pick call. Because of some of the sidelines and shared fields restrictions, the players from Red Flag are on this sideline. If you did play in the tournament last weekend, you may have noticed that there's separation between the teams required. And they've elected to have these two sidelines. And while not the optimal viewing experience, it does mean that we aren't interfering with player and player safety, which is the priority. If you ever ask me to make adjustments for the live stream and it impacts player safety, I would rather not have that. As Crank maintains a hold and starts off the game with a point, going up 1-0. Some interesting notes on all the players at this tournament, but Crank, not a new team. We have seen them previously. Their team that's about 3 years old was founded in 2019 and was co-founded by Brian Perry and Heather Wallace. Heather Wallace, one of the captains, along with Brian Perry. The other captain, Alexander Tombre La Rochelle. On the red flag side, who will be receiving this now, they are captained by Katie Wong, Annie Wong, Zelima Mott, and Edward Guo. Goes up. Neo DeBro outside the end zone. Throws a break, but just out of the reach of Mika Kurahashi. Kurahashi is the youngest girl born in 2002 on this team. But Crank now with the disc and on offense. Oh, and an almost to Callahan in the end zone. Handler miscommunication as Sam Creed picks it up and a vert stack in the end zone. And handle cut up the line to number 74, Sam Creed, who's also a rookie on this team, but apparently the team is only 2 years old. So it kind of feels like everyone is a rookie. Sam Creed previously played on Blackfish, General Strike, and Banana Cutters. So a Winnipeg transplant playing on the team from BC. And red flag. Make it 1-1. Crank did have the opportunity to break there, but turned it right on their own end zone line. It's always interesting to consider what strategy, whether it's going to be a zone defense or match. Just got this close end zone line. If you're just joining us, once again, due to player safety, the sidelines are on both lines. And this play has gone up line, and it's called not in by the observer, and popped across the full field. Bold, confident throw, but brought down by red flag. Indeed, let's see if the D-line can capitalize upon that. And a big grab. There might be a player issue. There's no call on the field yet, and that is called a point. And red flag, break. The notes I have here on their strikers are, we all strike. And we've only seen the one player so far. But it's this young athletic team full of U20 and U24 players. Break to start the tournament. It's quite possible we're going to see much more of that. And Crank were on the line for a point. This is not a dire situation, so to speak. Now, having played the tournament last weekend, these 70-minute games do not leave a lot of room for error, especially if you're tightly matched teams. It is very difficult to make a comeback if you get into a little bit of a hole. Not saying Crank is just yet. It's a 2-1 game, but they definitely need to hold this and then work from there. If you go back and look at some of the streams from last week, we did have some situations where there were comebacks, once again by a Vancouver team in the mixed game, but typically a gap persists. Pulled by number 44, Janelle Siwa. And disc lands near the brick, going into match defense with a vertical stack with cuts from the back. And a floaty upline throw is D'd by red flag once again. Siwa to pick up the disc. And I'm not sure what happened there. Was it stalled down? Was it D'd? But a turnover in that same spot. And handler cut. Right to the front corner of the end zone. Crank, hold. 2-2. A little bit of a strange play there. Was it a stall down potentially? Was it blocked? We can find out in post when we examine the tape more closely. Red flag now. Their O-line going out. Crank on screen in white. Mentioned a few items about the coaches, which we'll mention for each team. Heather Wallace, one of the co-founders of Crank, is coaching for UCI and likely not playing due to pregnancy. But she's also known for giant home-cooked meals. So if you ever get an opportunity to pick up on this team, do expect that if Heather's still involved with the team. That pull lands out of bounds. And it'll be, I believe, 20 seconds to bring it to the middle. You can see the observer counting down in the background. Horizontal stack. And unfortunately dropped that lefty backhand. Crank now, chance to break, get that point back. End zone calls from the sideline. And another slightly floaty throw, but that was perhaps the only option. A little bit of timing issues for both teams right now. Sam Creed sends it deep. And good work by the defender to bait in the red flag player, causing them to compete a little bit earlier and a little bit higher than potentially could have or needed to. Great closing speed there as well by number 24, Peter Yu. Will be bringing the disc. Red flag running a vertical stack. And plenty of options deep. You see me anticipating the hook there, getting faked out a little bit. And Peter Yu really anchoring this offense right now. Red flag playing with plenty of options upfield. And pulled down by number 3, Katie Wong. U24 previously played on Traffic and is normally a cutter and is also a captain on this team. So red flag hold after a little bit of a turnover. And the defensive pressure heating up from both teams as the rain dies down here at the fields. So if you're watching the games and you're looking for scores, you can check out the scores that are being reported to the Google Sheet and spreadsheet. Score reporting is dependent upon the teams. They scan a QR code, go to an online form in order to actually fill it out. So if the scores are a little bit delayed, that's why. Unlike other years for these tournaments where you will have a sideline volunteer who keeps scores. Teams are doing it themselves and are being asked just to minimize the number of people that we have at the fields. Match defense, as Crank has a little bit of contact on receiving from the defensive player. There's a foul call, not contested. Quick discussion. It'll be tapped in and we go. No reason for slowing that down any further. And a layout bid and the turn. And red flag sends it up deep. And let's see this battle. And the cheers from the Phoenix sideline who are watching the game for Kolfas Mott, formerly of Traffic, and on, I apologize, formerly on the Thunderbirds, who has been on the U24 team, as they bring in the absolute monster grab under pressure. And red flag break, make it 4-2, and Crank call a timeout to adjust. But that was basically a pick it up and huck it point, and confidence in the team to pull it down. So if you're looking for scores and you're in the chat, no, Marcus has shared a link that could potentially work. It's the bit.ly/ and you'll find the URL in there. Thank you, Noah, for sharing that. So exciting game so far with the score 4-2, red flag leading with 2 breaks in the first half. Halftime will be at 7. The next game on the stream will be Force from Ontario versus Red Flag. Be able to talk a little bit more about the history of Force as well on that game. As viewers of the stream last week, as well as the games this week, we just want to once again share that we are not asking for donations to cover the cost of the stream. Instead, what we're doing is we ask that you support a Indigenous charity, so either First Nations, Métis, or Inuit charity. In our case, we have listed a link to FN Caring, First Nations Caring. We do hope that you will support them. Red Flag receiving some instructions from their coach. They have 2 coaches, Alexander Lamb and Jonathan E. All right, Crank now in a situation where they have to get that point. They have to hold here. And it's a flat mark from Red Flag. And I do apologize if I'm not getting the names right. Some of the numbers that I have on my roster here are not correct, and some of the numbers I'm just having difficulty reading. And Crank make quick work at that point, moving it through the midfield for creating that opportunity in the end zone. Once again, a slightly floaty throw. This game originally scheduled for Field 1, but we are preserving Field 1 for tomorrow. We are expecting about half the amount of rain tomorrow throughout the day. And I was about to say Waterloo, but Ottawa, known for its patchy weather conditions throughout the region. So while it's dry right now, I do see some rain in the distance. Crank now with the opportunity to break. And after having put a little bit of a zone on for a few throws, Crank melts. But they haven't quite picked up on all their players. And no call. And a potential defensive error by Crank as the thrower looked to be unmarked for quite some time. Red flag, make it 5-3. Both teams bringing rather large rosters in terms of it feels like a full complement of players to this tournament, vying for that second bid, I believe, to Worlds. Ultimate Canada has indicated that there are at least 2 bids. The winners of the 2019 tournament will have the first bid, or at least, one of the bids, and then the remaining bids will be determined through the ranking here. That disc just a little bit out of the reach of both players diving to gather it, and red flag, another opportunity to break. A little bit messier play than we've normally seen from Crank, but red flag, not having seen them play, I can't comment too much on that. There's a call for somebody to cut. Crank now moving it, but initially having some difficulty. And foul, no call. Not contested. There is a pick call. When you see the observer in the background, they are simply relaying the call at this time up until you see them tap their shoulders. So once they tap their shoulders, then they've been asked to make an actual call. They are making active in and out, as well as in the end zone, out of the end zone calls. And crowded around the end zone, and throw into the blind spot results in a turn, red flag, with their second opportunity to break on this point. Vertical stack. And deep throw, but well read. I believe that's number 15, Alyssa Mainwood. And Crank moving it relatively easily up the field. Hold and prevent 2 break opportunities for red flag. So a longer point, but one that Crank needed to bring it into 5-4. Crank now matching up. You'll notice on stream, rather than saying man or person defense, I tend to use the word match. It's short, conveys the meaning as well of doing one-on-one. Well, let's see if a zone is coming through here. Lands inbounds, close to the sideline, pressure right away from Crank. And right behind that flag is one of the red flag players. And there's a throw to break throw, but there is a call. Taking with one hand, goes back. Pick call is what the observer has relayed. And that was, looks like Katie Wong that had gotten free. And turnover. It was looked like a push pass. Crank now on offense. And slicing it through the midfield, but just into the ground. Perhaps a throw in motion. Lots of room to operate, it looks like, with this vertical stack. Reset off the front. And bobbled. And the momentum will shift the other way. As the defense finally sets. Just out of reach of the Crank player, close to their end zone. Now, red flag. This is their O point. Need this to keep that 2-break margin and take a timeout. Take a breather. That'll be coming in on stalling 1. It's been a messy point for both teams. They've both marched to the end zone and turned it on the line. For Crank, it's important. If they can get the turn and punch it in, they tie it up 5-5, down 1 break. Red flag, need to hold this. They've had the opportunity. Their longer plays have been shut down at this point. So we'll see if they're able to make that adjustment to be able to strike. It has certainly been one of the stronger parts of their game so far. Red flag going with a side stack, 5 in the stack, 1 handler reset as well, giving lots of upfield options. As long as they can clear the space, they will have great areas for movement. And then Crank with poach off that stack. The disc behind the flag. And red flag. Get the point in the end zone. No call this time. And I'm just waiting to make sure that I see the number on the player, and I'll be able to relay who that is. Looks like number 3, Katie Wong, one of the captains on the team, U24 player, and formerly played on Traffic. Traffic potentially on the stream today in the last time slot. We had listed in our schedule a women's game in the last time slot after the schedule changed last night. That is only if Traffic and Iris end up in the top slot and win their pools. If that's the case, then the power pools are potential crossover immediately, and we'll see that showdown. But still lots of Ultimate left to be played today. We'll see if that materializes or not. As red flag maintains their 2-break advantage, and this disc sailing out of bounds, and Crank will be bringing it up to their brick. For viewers at home, there will be no other games on this particular field today. Just on field 1. So we'll have a little bit less crowded sideline. And breakthrough, Crank makes it 5. So the game staying close here by that initial 2 break advantage that we had is maintained. And this is a next point for a red flag will be half. Or if Crank has 2 breaks, they too will take half. If you have an opportunity to thank any of the volunteers, please do so in person. I'd like to thank the volunteers who are assisting with this tournament as well as the Ultimate Canada staff. It is been a difficult year for everyone in order to organize and run this tournament, and appreciate the opportunity to have played in it as well as now streaming and assisting with it as I can. As Crank to pull. And this disc also going out of bounds. There is a light wind from that corner going from right to left, from west to east, because we are facing south at this location. And plenty of separation there for number 74, Sam Creed, to make that a 4-point play. And red flag, 7-5, takes it to half. We're going to take a quick break and be back in 3 minutes. Enjoy your halftime, and let's see if Crank can bring this game back in. And we're back going into this second half of this red flag versus crank game. And while I have your attention, there was a question in the chat as to why are we doubling up on teams and given a tournament of this size. So just before I go, crank will be pulling. They are on D. Their red flag is up 7-5 right now. Game is to 13, 70-minute time cap. 20 minutes between games. Because of that, it's really difficult to move teams around. Also because of recommendations and health guidelines. The tournament organizers and on advice have prioritized minimizing player movement between fields, between divisions. So trying to keep teams in their pool bubble beside each other, which means that when we're selecting games that have to go on stream, we have to select it from the division that's playing here between these three fields. Sam Greedy swings it to Katie Wong. Katie sends a laser through the middle field to Zoe Luke. And back to Sam Creedy, sends it down the sideline. There is a catch, but there's a call, a pick call. So it'll come back. It is a tight vertical stack in the end zone. Only really the space between the 1 and 2. It's reset back. Sam back to this side. And Creed puts it up the line to number 24, who has plenty of running room, Peter Yu, who's played on essentially within the Vancouver system, starting off on the Thunderbirds, then going to Blackfish, and then Furious. Sorry, to continue answering the questions of why we just don't have the opportunity to pick any game and put it on field 1. We have to pick from the divisions, so the pool that's playing here on this set of fields. And so from that, we are trying to select games that would be essentially the best to view or may provide an interesting game. Certainly, there are games that will be closer in nature, but there are also imbalances at this point in pool play. If I had a 4-day tournament, my finals day to stream would be all the finals, and I would, on the Thursday, essentially elect to stream games that would provide visibility to teams that typically aren't on stream and players that aren't on stream. And that's what we've done in the past. If you look back through our history on our This Is Ultimate YouTube channel, when we streamed Nationals previously, that's what we've done. Crank now in a situation where they need 3 breaks to tie this game and 4 to win. Need to hold this on the offense side. And moving it up the sideline. If they have that space, given the confidence of their handlers, absolutely nothing wrong with just continuing to move it up the sideline. There is a call in the field. It's an injury. And it's a little bit concerning. And I apologize, I'm not getting the numbers across. It's difficult for me to see the numbers and the mix of numbers for Crank. Some of the players seem to have different typeface on their jerseys or are wearing a jersey with a number inside out. it is also one field over. Crank with a vert stack in the end zone. Vertical stack is typically what you're going to run in the end zone. I believe that is, I can't see the number from here, so I do apologize once again. But crank, hold, make it 8-6. So to continue addressing the variety of games, unfortunately, we have very short time limits. Moving players and around between fields can be difficult, whereas when they're playing within their pool play divisions, it's very easy for them to move from one field to another because it's the next field, versus pulling in a team that might be somewhere way out there, having them adjust, get ready for the sideline, and then also having them interact with other players as they're moving, which has been asked to be minimized for this tournament. I'm sure that next year or the following year, we'll be able to do a 4-day tournament for both seniors and masters. And if that's the case, it's likely that there'll be far more games streamed, far more variety, and longer games as well. 70 minutes is really tough to get yourself out of a hole, to correct any errors, make a second half comeback, so to speak. The rain has started up. It's a very light drizzle, but the conditions are also very dynamic. Sam Creed against a zone now. And Scuber stays just in bounds. And waiting to see the space open up. And that was like a double huck, but a massive strike against the zone. And that's number 79, Zoe Luke, who's been on Team Canada under 20 and is also a rookie on this team. So 9-6, the score, with about 20 minutes left to play. Crank as well, a little bit late getting their 7 players to the line. Perhaps involved in conversation on the sideline, but getting there just in time to show a hand and receive. When playing with observed games, the observers manage the time and they do the counts and they check with you whether you're ready to receive or pull and essentially take care of some of that management. So it stays on the clock. And that throw floats a little bit. And Kevin Tong with the D. And just out of reach of Miu Shiraiwa. The red flag, get it back on a D from Jasmine Chen. And now Andrew Ling hucks it immediately and confidently taken at the back of the end zone. As red flag extends their lead. And that was number 20, Colfas Mott, who pulled that in. You can see that there's immediate low throws for many of the players. They are looking to huck and they're looking to strike and constantly strike and cycle. And they're willing to put it up because on defense, they're also putting in the time and energy to try and get the turn. So from the question also in the stream, tomorrow, what does the schedule look like? Will only one division have the finals? The schedule for tomorrow is in flux. The divisions aren't necessarily playing all in one place. There are more buys as well for teams. Whereas today for pool play, they have to get through their games before they'll move forward. So we're more interested in what we have scheduled right now for tomorrow is the bid games, not necessarily the finals. As red flag gets the run through D. So we have I believe, a women's game to start the day off tomorrow. A hammer, floating hammer. And Captain Katie Wong brings that down to make it 11. And that was still under pressure. So what's happening tomorrow is that we are starting off with what I believe is a women's game. Then there are mixed quarterfinals. There's potentially 4 teams or 4 different games there. And a decision will be made closer to time as to which one of those games will actually be played on field 1. Then after that, there's again a continuing number of games. I believe we have the mixed final scheduled to finish off the day, but there's also bid games because the importance of this year is to figure out the bids. So depending upon whether there's a team already that is in a women's final or bid game or the open final / bid game that already has a bid, that will adjust our schedule for one of the time slots. So for example, Furious already has a bid. I believe Sixers already has a bid. So neither of those teams would, that game essentially, we may not run or show because for the world's outcomes, it's not a game that matters. So for example, if there was a finals game, that may not be on stream. Today's schedule as well changed last night based on the women's division voting to reduce the number of overall games. So schedules are in flux. Very poachy zone, which has now melted from red flag. Oh, and just a drop in the midfield. It's heartbreaking. As Janelle picks it up, moves it midfield. And not in called. And just a quick flip from Janelle Siwa, who initially tried to toe it in, to looks like number 5, Marcus Young. And red flag with another break. Red flag now on the cusp of finishing off this game at 13. Crank making some adjustments in this game. They, as mentioned, if they finish top 2 in their pool, will end up going into quarters. So there's still plenty of tournament ahead of them. Our next game will be at 13:30, 1:30 p.m. With regards to the schedule for tomorrow, we will have more clarity later on tonight. We'll make another post on our social media pages. Official schedule will come from Ultimate Canada. We're just the people that run the camera. Disc goes OB, will be coming to the brick mark. Which is a little bit farther up the field as players adjust, and now they're also looking for a deep strike option, but red flag seems to be baiting that. This Crank team with players from all over Canada. With a high release flick and 2 red flag players underneath it make it difficult for anyone to make a play. Jesse Watt been making a few plays this game, at least on this point. Makes a break throw over the receiver, intended receiver, and caught by Kyle Xia. Essentially scooped up from the ground to make it 13-6, and that is the game. Almost going to time. That's a tough game for Crank. It's somewhat expected for red flag in terms of we wanted to see their speed. If you read up on some of the write-ups from other social media channels, this was a team that we were looking at to see how they'd fare here, because with so many of top players composed, we'll be looking at that. Just received a message through social media. Again, you can always contact us. You can contact me. We do have a lot of say in what's going on. Ultimate Canada, where they've been able to enter Bachelor, has allowed us to switch teams between these fields. We have to operate within their guidelines, though, and I'm not going to push too much because, as I always say to people, the player safety and the game experience matters more than this thing that I'm doing here or our team members are doing behind the camera. Certainly, you're important as a community. We have to prioritize the games and make sure we don't interfere with what's happening on field. That means that tomorrow, the schedule being up in flux, we can move things around a little bit. As they're scheduled right now, if you look at the schedule off of Ultimate Canada's page, anything that's on UPI Field 1, we will be aiming to have here. There will still be finals games and bids games, but we want to make sure that that second bid game is what we're prioritizing as much as possible, which if certain teams aren't in it, we will try to get in. So with that said, I know it sounds confusing, and we're also going to be getting clarity. I hope you did enjoy this game. The next game that's happening starting in 30 minutes is on field 1. It'll be closer. I'll be able to see the numbers, call more names, things like that. The remaining games are on this field for the remainder of the day and the remainder of the tournament. Next up in our schedule, Force versus Red Flag. Force from Ontario, quite a few top-level players and alumni on that team from other touring programs, open and women's programs, but a program that's really built itself out of Barrie and plays with a tremendous amount of heart. I'm excited to see that team play because it's a team that I've seen play many, many times. I was there, not in Barrie, not part of the team, but when that program started, I believe we might have broadcast one of their first games. Red Flag, as you just saw, dynamic as well. Let's see how they face up because that'll make an interesting battle and how the pool shapes up and finishes out. Our second to last game will be Stella from Ontario from the Ottawa region playing against Fusion from Manitoba. Stello, their Masters team, won gold last week. Many of those players, some of those players, also playing on the Stella team. And we look forward, as always, to seeing Fusion on here, a very dynamic team based out of Winnipeg that is perennially finished in the top results in the women's division. So that should be an excellent matchup as well. Please come and watch that. And then in the last game slot of the day, I know we said it's Iris from Quebec versus Traffic from BC, but that's only if both of those teams finish in their top slots in their pool. If not, whomever the top two teams in those, or the top team in each pool will show up over here or close to. It's a crossover game that we're interested in seeing the results of. So that'll be the last game of the day. We will know probably just a few minutes before that game who will actually be here, but please tune in. Also, in chat, community has been putting out links that hopefully you can see and share for results. Please stay tuned on that side. This game, though, finishes up 13 for Red Flag, 6 for Crank. And we're going to take a break and be back in 20 minutes. Thank you.